Pop Culture Pastor.
Cody, I happen to have some marshmallows here, but they're not for you. Marshmallows are for team players, Cody.
I'm not a team player.
They don't just hand them out. Man, this show, I got to tell you what, man. First of all, let's right off the bat. This is Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs. I don't want to get going and forget to say who we are.
I was going to let us move past who we are just because large rectangular marshmallows are kind of creepy.
Everything about this episode was creepy. Okay, it's Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs. I'm Dave. Cody's here.
I am.
We got to get this out of the way because we're just going to get lost in this.
I'm already lost.
Because season 2, episode 4 of Severance, I think it's fair to say, is one of the most, if not the most bizarre episode of the series.
It was so unhinged.
There's just some really bizarre things going on here. And yeah, we'll get to the marshmallows. Like, so weird. So weird. But the episode opens with our guy, Irving B. We hear the elevator ding. And he is standing out in the middle of a frozen lake with Russian coats and hats on, gear.
I felt like it was Spies Like Us.
Yes. It looked very much like the coats and Spies Like Us, except they were all black. And it's Irv. It's Irv B, right? Which makes sense because basically this episode's going to begin and end with the same kind of shot. Irv B coming in with the elevator ding, and then later on it'll be the opposite.
Theoretically.
He is immersed again in the perpetual winter, which is interesting because, well, we'll get to that. But it's perpetual winter here in Keir National Forest, Dieter Keir National Forest.
Nice.
The comedic one-liners again in this episode, and really, it's not even what they're saying is funny. It's the delivery.
Looking at you, Dylan.
Yeah, Dylan. Yeah, is like, who's Dieter? Dieter Egan. I think I said Dieter Keir. I meant Dieter Egan National Forest.
Yes.
Yeah, who's Dieter Egan? And yeah, Irving's journey is the central one in this episode. This is an Irv B episode.
And be kind to my friend Irv, because I love Irv.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes now. We've got confusion and fear. Obviously, he's not used to being outdoors. The innie of Irv, but he is standing there for a few seconds before we hear a familiar voice. Irv! And Mark, is that you? And Mark, yeah. And then he says, come up here. You want me to climb? Well, yeah. It is funny that
the young guy's making the old guy climb up.
I was like, oh, this isn't the real Mark. Why does he want Irv to climb up the cliff?
This doesn't seem safe.
There is a path, but it is slippery, we're told. He gets to the top, and there's Mark in his Russian outdoorsy gear. And then the whole team kind of shows up. Well, he meets Helly on the way up, and then Dylan at the top.
Dylan's entrance.
Yeah. Dylan just makes an interest. And they're all sort of bewildered because, they're used to the sterile, controlled environment of the Lubin office. And here they are in this vast, snowy landscape. No sign of any civilization, by the way.
So it kind of reminded me of the Paramount commercials where they're like on the mountaintop, just looking out. And I'm like, but there's no SpongeBob out there. Just empty winterness.
So they're standing on a cliff. Cheesy music starts playing. Sounds like elevator music. It's coming from a TV on the cliff. The TV is on a DVD menu screen from like 1997.
It was beautiful.
Oh, man. And they hit play. They start watching it. this is Mr. Milchick from work. This entire episode is nuts, Cody. It's absolutely nuts. Like, what were you thinking at this point?
Where are they? And is any of this real? Is this like virtual reality? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, apparently it's an Ortbo.
Yeah, Ortbo.
An outdoor retreat and team building occurrence that feels more like a strange forced assignment than a break. This feels, by the time we get to the end of the episode, I'm not so sure this wasn't a controlling thing. At least it's clearly it's about control.
So what was the project that Mark was so close to finishing according to Patricia Arquette?
Cold Harbor. Now, Irv's is Montauk.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the one on his screen later on in the episode. Cold Harbor, and that's the one that's specifically referenced by Miss Cobell in a previous episode, and a couple other characters too, that he's so close to finishing. That seems to be very important.
It does.
So an outdoor retreat and team building occurrence. It's very much to me about control, and we'll get into that as we go along. But they've kind of pushed them into this uncomfortable and surreal situation, even if they are somewhat. It's like shock and awe because they've never been outside. There's a point in the episode where they get like a small controlled torch, and they're all looking at it like cavemen who have just discovered fire. Cody,
I loved it.
It was impressive. Yeah, so they're tasked basically in this video. They're like, you are going to learn about Dieter Egan from the fourth appendix of whatever it is that Keir Egan's holy book is.
Yeah.
I mean, this show just keeps getting more strange.
Is that Mark over there?
Yeah. Okay, so they'll have help along the way, Milchick says on the very weird old DVD dated technology. And you're assuming like, oh, maybe Mr. Drummond will show up. I don't know. But no, instead, it's these weird robotic copies of them.
So it looked a lot like the kind of weird figurines that are in the intro, but we didn't get the intro this episode.
Yeah, well, okay, so I forgot to mention that was a total cold open.
Oh yeah, and it just did quick flash of Severance.
And real cold, by the way.
Yes.
It looks real cold. So they're tasked with going through this wilderness, Dieter Egan National Forest, to learn something about Keir Egan's life, and particularly whatever the story is with this brother Dieter, who we find out is his twin. So they are directed into this creepy cave, which immediately I thought of Empire Strikes Back. Did anyone else think of that?
For a brief moment.
What is that? Is that Socrates, the cave, too? Which that's kind of modeled off of?
Socrates or Plato?
Plato? I don't remember. One of those other ones. I'm thinking, oh, this is a giant philosophical moment. Instead, it's just a creepy cave where they walk in a little bit and they find this leather-bound book with the Roman numerals I and V on it, which is 4. This is the fourth appendix they've heard of, which seemed a little too easy to find.
It was very easy to find.
If I'm being honest. Which apparently tells the history of Keir and his twin Dieter, and they pick this up and they continue toward Woe's Hollow.
I loved story time through this book.
Yeah. So they read a little bit of it here, just right at the beginning, but we're going to get the bulk of the story later.
Which, like, the parts they read, I'm like, whoa, this is saucy. No wonder why you all didn't get to read it on the Severance floor.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think, again, we'll get there. I do want to get a little in depth into that. Irving, at one point, they come across a dead seal?
A dead animal of something.
What's it doing there?
Being dead.
This had all sorts of like Lost vibes with the polar bear in the jungle.
I loved his initial reaction is, We need to eat it.
Yeah, well, okay. So I think his panicked tone sets the stage early on that Irv is pretty convinced that this outing is not a reward. And it shows he's kind of starting to figure things out here. He's starting to figure out that they're being manipulated and controlled.
Dylan is all on board that this is just your regular standard Ortbo.
Yes.
Which I love.
That is very any Dylan. Very any Dylan. By the way, the showrunners clearly want the viewer to understand that too, I think. That this outing's not a reward. Because they're playing this weird, generic, scary music all episode. Like it's like the CSI music when they're chasing down a serial killer. Like it's really almost cheesy.
I loved it.
It was kind of cool.
I was here for all the cheese.
This episode is like a masterclass in storytelling, just all the way around. Because even that, with the music choices, they're saying something with it.
So during the lost or the found seal, there's like a bird that's like in the background, and then it kind of flies away weird. And I'm like, birds aren't real.
I'm not so sure these birds are real. I guess someone call Alex Jones. They're led through the forest until they finally get to Woe's Hollow, which features a waterfall. Not just a waterfall, Cody. This was the part of the episode I absolutely fell out. Because Milchick says, this is the tallest waterfall in the world. Nope.
I believe it.
I absolutely almost fell out of my chair laughing at that point. And that will lead us to our first Conspiracy. Conspiracy!
Okay, what's your conspiracy?
This ain't real. None of this is real. They're not outside. This is somewhere. They are somewhere in Lumen.
Yes.
There is no way they're outside.
/ So you think where Irv appeared, he's appearing in the middle of a frozen lake. Mm-hmm. Super thick, evidently, because he's walking, ice isn't cracking.
Yes. What would that tell you, Cody?
That it's super cold.
Yes.
But then we get to a waterfall that is running perfectly.
Uh-huh.
And for as far as you can see, out from the waterfall, water's still running.
Yeah.
I have a few issues.
There are clues of what you should be thinking here. Yeah. I don't know what's going on here. But clearly, we see again that Lumen possesses technology that far outdates what they show.
I also like to think this is where the goats will go.
I don't think so, man. There's nothing for them to eat. Too much snow. They get to where they're camping. So this would be the part of the episode that I will call the camp sequence.
But before then, Irv's like, will there be substance? Food.
Yeah, we're starving, Mr. I love he's like, we're starving. Do you think he's really starving?
Nope.
I don't think so. Irv is... I watched the episode twice, and definitely on the second watch, Irv's got this pretty much the whole way through. He's just looking for that one piece of defining evidence that proves it.
Yes, and I love Milchick's response of, well, I thought you would be satisfied with the grandeur of this.
Satiated, Cody.
Satiated, yes.
I thought you would be satiated in the ongoing Lumen way of using vocabulary that no one uses.
Has ever used.
So we get to the camp. Miss Wong is there. Miss Wong's been readying the grill, for which we have brought in copious luxury meats and marshmallows.
Creepy marshmallows.
Copious luxury meats. I don't even know what comes to my mind when someone says copious luxury meats. What's a luxury meat?
Like, are you having the finest bison and elk?
I mean, but that's not luxury meat. That's gamey. Nobody wants that.
Bison's not gamey.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It seems to me like luxury meat would be like a filet.
Maybe from those cows that are fed specific types of grass and
Kobe.
chocolate.
It's Kobe beef.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of this is interesting too.
Or it's Soylent Green.
As they're as they're getting settled in, I guess, Irv goes to his tent. Helly brings Irv a seal made from snow. A snow steel, Cody, because how? Oh, because she just knew how to make a snow seal.
Because everyone knows how to do that, Dave.
Like, is she trying to be suspicious? What is happening right now? Like, why would her innie know how to make a seal out of snow? It's the first time. Like, look, later on the episode, we're going to document that it's the first time they've seen fire. Conceivably, wouldn't this be the first time they saw snow?
Or a seal.
Or, yeah, well, yeah. All of this is weird. All of this is so odd. She's, of course, in his tent, and Irv drops all pretense. What did you really see in the overtime contingency?
I'm like, Irv, you're playing a dangerous game, buddy.
She says, I told you. He says, it's okay. It won't change anything. They stare at each other for a bit. And then again, maybe in just a glorious piece of acting, by the way, by Britt Lower, there is an interesting change in her countenance. Very subtle, again, but it's happened a lot in the last couple episodes where we're close up on someone's face and they go from one emotion to like a different emotion, and we see it in their face. And she says, okay, and walks out. Whatever countenance she changed to was very obviously un-Helly-esque.
It was.
And very Helena Egan-ish. And was that her dropping pretense, you think? Like, oh, Irv knows and I'm not playing around anymore.
I think that was just her giving up on trying to persuade him.
Yeah. All right, Cody. So we get to the part they're in the camp. They're settling down by the fire. They're eating their luxury meats, allegedly, supposedly. And now we get to the story. Just on the surface, this story reveals that Dieter Egan, in a fit of rebellion, took Kier to live in the woods, his brother, into Woe's Hollow. And what follows is a very bizarre story that honestly sounds like some of your stranger Greek myths. Greek myths could be graphic in what they were talking about, especially like sometimes with bodily functions.
Yes.
And a bodily function is used here in a sense that's clearly metaphorical. Like the whole story feels metaphorical.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way Dieter Egan dies is very strange. But it has this very Greek mythology feel to it, which, Cody, makes me feel like the story is, one, fabricated, but two, fabricated in a specific way to point out that the innie's life is meant to be spent industriously and not on frivolous things, like, for instance, having children and leisure.
Yes.
No need for anyone to find happiness being woodland paupers, Cody. Cody, is the Kier cult capitalist?
Of course. I honestly think a lot of cults tend to be capitalist. Because if you can find a belief and you get people to buy into it and invest in it, all the resources will eventually come flowing in that others will bring, and the top will thrive. Even if this isn't a quote-unquote religious cult, but it seems that way, it theoretically is trying to keep the mechanism going.
Yeah.
And if you have kids, you have sick days, and you have hospital appointments and doctor's visits and vacations, and that ruins production and productivity. So if you can have a group of people that are like, no siree, we gotta go in, then you're winning.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of build on some previous conspiracies, because not only do I think this whole place they're in is fake, and they're not really outside, I'm going to go a little bit further here. Because I don't think we've had any evidence on the outside world of the age of the Lumen Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
While in the innie world, we've had all these kind of hints that obviously Lumen has been passed through descendants, and that this is a long-lasting kind of organization. What if that's all junk, Cody? What if this is a very new corporate entity and they're trying to fool the innies into think they're part of something bigger, because that increases workload? What if all of this, the mythology, what if it's all just created to try and get the most out of your workers? That's what the severed workers are all about, right? They're supposed to be unencumbered by the distractions of life outside of work. So everything this company has done has been in the effort of creating mindless drones, basically, out of human beings while still using human beings, because, like, there must be something that they can do that AI can't. Like, I'm getting the feeling, like, what if this is all AI? What if Lumen is AI?
Potentially. I will say that if you can provide purpose and meaning in someone's life, then you can give them motivation. Going to the Viktor Frankl book, Man's Search for Meaning, it's real easy to get downtrodden, burdened by work, feel depressed, productivity, work outload goes down, all that stuff. But if there's a bigger and grander purpose and meaning to it, then they're going to be more motivated to work. And so creating almost a religion-like thing, I think, would help the innies be super serious about what's happening.
Well, look at the work they're doing, too. They're doing work with numbers that appears to be random, but they're grouping them. And the operative piece that the innies bring to the work is feelings.
Yes.
Oh, these numbers are scary. These numbers make me feel a certain way. Well, what can't AI do? It can't feel. So I feel like that the whole Lumen everything is AI. The Egan family can still exist, but I bet it's a newer company than we think.
So I'm wondering, with my conspiracy moment.
Conspiracy!
A lumen is a unit of measurement for light.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
You have talked about how a lot of this seems to be maybe a metaphor for HE double hockey sticks, as the kids call it.
Which there was still some weird little inputs in this episode.
And what is Lucifer's name mean?
Morning Star? Son of the Morning? I don't know. What does it mean? I'm not familiar with this lore of the faith I'm a part of.
So you did get Morning Star or Bearer of Light.
Bearer of Light. Okay. Yeah, I remember that now.
And so I do think that that's not a coincidence. That the corporation's not named Kier or Egan or anything like that. It's named Lumen, which measures light. Okay. And all this imagery keeps popping up. You might be onto something, buddy.
Well, in Christian lore, or, as we go back into Christian lore, is basically Jewish.
Yes.
The idea is, and I'm not even sure where this comes from, but that Lucifer is a worship leader as an angel, essentially. He is a bringer of worship, which I suppose works, right? Bringer of light. I don't know where do we get that from?
Tradition.
Just tradition? Yeah, that's what I
And
thought.
there's some ancient texts that kind of back it up, but they're not canonical.
Not canonical. Well, we should make some recanonicalized paintings then.
We should.
To tie in with this weird show. So Mr. Milchick goes through this just really macabre, weird story.
Super
I feel
weird.
like I'm using bigger vocabulary now just because of this show.
Yes.
Because I feel like it fits. Kier, by the way, at the end of this story, meets the first of the 4 quote unquote tempers. Whoa. That's not an expression. That's WOE.
Yeah.
Whoa. And Irv asks, is that really how Dieter died? See, Irv is on it, man.
Yes.
Milchick says, the handbook enriches our lives with tales of the founder's life. Every word is true. To which one of the more surprising parts of the episode, Helly, who we know by the end of the episode is actually Helena Egan, starts laughing.
It was at that moment I'm like, okay, this is Helena for sure.
Okay, but that backs up my conspiracy I just gave. That none of this is real. That their mythology building is all fake. That this is probably a newer company because she straight up laughs at it. To which Milchick, very annoyed. There's a theme here of the kids. If it is real, the kids laughing at the faith of the parents. Mm-hmm. There's kind of a thing that's going on there. Milchick's not amused. Very menacingly, he says, we often mock what we don't understand.
I agree, Milkshake.
The team I thought I knew would have processed more thoughtfully. And then he directs Miss Wong to throw the marshmallows into the fire, which the gasp Mark S. lets out. Oh, come on. Oh, that scene was gold.
Well, Mark, if you would not have been laughing with your GF.
Just absolute gold is that scene in its entirety.
I felt bad for Dylan. I think he was looking forward to the marshmallows.
Well, and Dylan's riding high, right? Like, this is old Dylan.
Yes.
This is Dylan before he found out anything was wrong, because now he's like getting, visits from his outie wife and life is good. And he doesn't want that to change. He's back to being like super employee, and all of this is weird to him. And he spends most of the episode being very, you can tell, confused. He's going to have a moment at the end of the episode, but we'll continue because Irv, because they're still laughing as Milchick has thrown the marshmallows into the fire. Irv seriously says, it's not funny. The story isn't funny. And he tells Mark to stop making goo-goo eyes at Helly.
Yeah. Someone needed to check them.
Well, because Irv's trying to tell them. I mean, this whole episode, he's trying to tell them. But you can tell he's looking for that moment she's going to mess up. At the camp, Irving begins to question, at the campfire, Irving begins to question Heliar more aggressively. Tell us about the night gardener. Which, yeah, that's ridiculous part of her story.
He's well aware.
To which she gets defensive and says, it's okay. We all know Irving's upset because he can't see Bert again. And that's the moment he knows. Mm-hmm. That is the moment he knows that this is not Heliar, that this is Helena Egan. And he's still putting the pieces together, but this is the moment he's been kind of looking for, which I think, again, Irv's a smart dude. I think he does all of this to just try to get her to draw her out. Did you get that feeling?
It was by this point that I had put together some of those pieces and was like, oh, this explains some of his more peculiar moments, because he stops and talks with Mark. What did she say to you? Why is he doing all this random poking and prodding? Because, if he isn't aware, then Irv would just be being Irv, but something's not right.
The interesting thing about Helena is you can tell she's a stunted person too. So the innies are all stunted because that's by design. They've been denied this outside world and this past and this growing up, whereas Helena Egan clearly is stunted because she's been denied all those same things, but naturally, organically somehow. Because, here's Irv noticing her, behavior, the inconsistencies. He confronts her. And then when she dismisses his loneliness as a weakness, he knows for sure. Britt Lower, the actress who plays Helena, said this in an interview with Variety about this episode. She said, I think she's getting a chance to have a laugh about it. She's like, this is the filter who would get to do that and not suffer the consequences. So she's becoming more human with the innies, as we see in this episode, as she has like this time with Mark S. where they get close, where we talked about in a former episode. She's clearly curious. Mm-hmm. She's clearly not had this like human, like any sort of intimate contact. I'm not just talking about like the intimacy between a husband and wife, spouses. I'm talking about a close friend. She's clearly been denied this.
I also wonder if maybe it's just like that rebellious child of someone that has power.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of, I think of the Sheens. I go Charlie Sheen in his.
She's the wild child.
Yes.
But like in her conversations with Cobell, that's clearly the implication that she's an important ranking person in this company, but they don't all fully trust her because she's unpredictable.
And Dad's trying to reel her in.
Yeah. As the tension between Irving and Helly builds, Irving becomes disillusioned with the retreat, as we would say, one way to put it, and his agitation peaks, leading him to storm off into the wilderness after Helly has said this cruel thing to him.
Taking the torch.
Taking his torch. They all got one, right?
He took it.
So he storms off. Meanwhile, Helly goes back to her tent. Mark S. follows her, and then they share like this intimate moment. This is kind of a pivotal scene because obviously there's this emotional and physical connection that they're having, but someone he believes is Helly R, though the person's actually Helena Egan. This is going to have massive implications, I think.
Yep.
But also you see the cracks in Helena. Like while they're close, she says, that was mean of me to say that to Irving. She's like having regrets in real time. But as this is going on, as they're sharing this time together, he looks at her and like, the end of the last episode ends with him being quote unquote reintegrated. We hadn't really seen any signs of that. Maybe, although there might be a couple clues. There was the weird scene in this episode, Cody, where he says to Irving, we know you had a bad experience on the outside. And Irving immediately looks at Dylan and is like, you told him? And Dylan's like, no. That was a clue.
Yes.
I think Mark may be reintegrated and he doesn't fully know it yet. Because I don't think he's playing. I don't think he's not like Helena, where she's manipulating intentionally. I don't think Mark's fully aware of it yet, as evidenced by he sees his wife Gemma for a split second in the face of Helena. But he's confronted with this vision of his wife, and this vision serves as a reminder of his reintegration for us, the viewer, which clearly is something's happening to him.
Yes.
So the vision of Gemma is a clue, signaling to the viewer that this process may be more connected, more going on so than we initially realized. I tried to pick up more upon second watch, and really just that little conversation where he says to Irv, we know you had a bad experience, when no, he shouldn't have done that.
Not yet.
Helena partially admits that she lied about what she saw on the outside world. Again, she's cracking. The cracks are coming through. She's becoming human because she has feelings for Mark S. Clearly. She confesses to Mark S., I didn't like who I was on the outside. I was ashamed. So that's real. That's true. But it's coming from who she was on the outside, which is, again, super interesting. She's telling him truth from Helly R's point of view. This moment adds some complexity to her character because I'm not really sure. She, in that Variety article, the actress Britt Lower says, there are two sides. These are two sides of the same person. So they share a body and a subconscious, but they're in very different circumstances, both trapped in different ways by the same company. Helena is trapped in a familial way. She's trapped in a family that she didn't choose. This particular family is in charge of a company that has a high amount of control within the lore, which that sentence was very revealing to me. There's a cult-like quality to the company. End quote.
I've been picking that up.
So Irv walks out in the forest as creepy music plays. He finally sits down next to a rock, exhausted, and falls asleep, which I was sure that he was going to die of hypothermia at this point, the first time I was watching.
As I was watching it, I'm like, clearly this isn't a real spot.
Yeah.
There's no danger to him.
Yeah. The fact that all of these things go back to support my conspiracy for this episode. This ain't really outside. Wherever they're at, they ain't really outside. They're not really subject to the conditions of an outside world. But the dream he has is clearly a much spookier forest. It was very cartoonish in a way. Like the trees, the way they were bent, the branches. Again, it's clearly meant to be frightening. He sees the MDR desks. As he sits down in his spot, he sees Bert on one side momentarily, because then he pulls the divider back up, which is, I think, like, yeah, you're saying goodbye to him. I think is what that's supposed to mean. Then on the other side, tapping away at the computer, is our first temper woe, a miniature scary person.
A halfling.
Very creepy looking. She reminded me of the girl from The Ring. Irv looks at his computer screen. At this point, there's only 1s, 4s, 5s, and 7s on it. That's it. Those 4 numbers. Then he looks again. We get a shot of his face. Then back to the screen. Then we have E, A, G, and N with some 3s, which seemed odd though, but like definitely the letters of Egan. And then a jump scare with whoa. And he wakes up from his dream. Don't know that we needed the jump scares, Cody.
We needed the jump scare. It added.
The tension between Irving and Helena reaches its peak. Because he comes back, he's yelling for Mr. Milchick. Helena just happens to be down by the waterfall. Just happens to be down there. And he says, I'm going to mimic the way he asks this question. What are you doing down here? Now, could the waterfall just be in a little valley kind of area and that would be what he meant? Maybe, but I don't think he takes the dramatic pause. Cody, we never saw him at the end of last week's episode when the old lady in O&D tells him about the evil elevator that goes down. Is it possible that this was all in Irving's mind? Is it possible he found this elevator, found some lower floor in Lumen that all this is happening at? Because we never see the end of that storyline, and then this week he's just here, and we're the first face. He's the first face we see.
Potentially. I'm not ruling it out. We'll have to wait till next week.
Yeah. I still think there's even though we get some big reveals here, and some big happenings, there's still a lot of things that need clarity. He says to Helly, when you said to me last night, what you said to me last night was cruel. Helly was never cruel. So if you're not her, then who are you? Who would have the power to send their Audi to the severed floor? To which she says, I'm sorry. He has clearly figured it out. Not only figured out that she's fake, but figured out who she is, that she is a member of the inner circle. He, of course, accuses her of being a mole, as everyone has kind of come onto the scene because he's been yelling and she started yelling and
Mark's been yelling.
Mark's been yelling. She's been an outie the whole time. He drags her near the water and starts to drown her.
This is my what the Severance moment.
Oh, wait, I didn't do that at the beginning.
No, but it worked perfectly.
What the Lumen?
Or what the Lumen.
Okay,
Lumen.
This is the what the Lumen. What the Lumen?
Yes. With Irv at the waterfall with not Helly.
Yeah. And at first, Oh, he's trying to kill her.
Yes.
We're going to learn that I think it was all for show.
A ruse.
It was a ruse. He's forcing her face down into the water. The tension's rising. They're way up on the cliff, so they can't get down there in time. So they just yell, and Milchick is yelling. And finally, he brings Helly, quote unquote. Helly's up out of the water, and she says, "Seth, just do it." And then that's when Irving knows he's got him, because he's like, "Yes, Seth, do it," because they didn't know his first name.
Dylan heard it, but Dylan forgot.
Yeah.
Or didn't piece it together.
But it's the sign that this Helly was never really Helly. Milchick picks up his walkie-talkie and says, "Remove the Glasgow block," which, that sounds weird and interesting. Then he holds her. She's confused, frightened, wet, cold, and he's holding her. He says, "I'm so sorry, Helly. I'm so sorry." So that's when it's clear.
It was so nice of him.
Yeah. Then the end of the episode, everybody's angry and confused, except for the innies are starting to get it a little bit. Milchick, Irving B., stand. You have threatened collegial murder in the pond of Woe's Hollow. For this, there can be no penalty but immediate and permanent dismissal. I love it when Milchick's angry.
Oh, I felt bad for Dylan at this moment.
Yeah, because he very emotionally says, "I should have listened to you. I should have listened to you." And then Irv so sweetly turns to him and says, "It's okay. Just remember, hang in there." It's like the posters that were on the wall inside of the doctor's office in your school.
Yes.
Oh man, just wild. Milchick tells him to walk into the forest. As he turns around and start walking, you can see that Irv is accepting his fate with this kind of expression of peace, maybe even a little satisfaction. I think there is, because he knows he's exposed to truth. This is true sacrifice.
It is.
Because now he's put in the seed of what is real truth and the doubt that they should all have, and he's paying for it with, his life, essentially. Because
at least his severed one.
The episode ends with Milchick coldly informing him that Irv B will be erased from existence, with his file purged and all records of him destroyed. It'll be as if you never existed. May Kier's mercy follow you into the eternal dark. Whew. What I really want to know, Cody, that we're not shown, is what did the Indies just witness?
Yeah.
So did Irv B just disappear? Did he just disappear? I really want to know. Or did his body, they got to show us that, right? They got to show us what they saw. Because that would be a huge clue about what's going on.
Did they witness a murder?
Is it possible, Cody, that they're cloning? That this isn't just the same body? I'm very curious to see what happens, what the innies see after Irv B is, quote unquote, I guess, erased. Because he's not in the elevator. It always happens in private.
Yeah.
And this happened right out in front of everybody. So I'm very curious to see what's about to happen.
And will we have any more Ortbos?
More Ortbos, definitely. It's time for the Changes Award. Who goes through the most changes this episode, Cody?
I think it's Helena.
Yeah, well, we haven't even had this. Confirms Helly hasn't been here the whole season.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah, this has been Helena Egan. So, yeah, I guess the biggest change is going to be we're going to get a very confused Helly R.
And a very confused Mark S. and Dylan.
Well, and they're going to be distrusting of her, right? Because they're never going to know.
Maybe.
They're going to have to come up with a code phrase or something. Like Ted Lasso, Oklahoma. Who's the winner of the episode?
Irving.
Irv B.
or
darn straight.
John Turturro.
Yeah, man. He's great. This is the perfect heroic episode for him.
It was.
He literally lays down his life for his friends.
Greater love has not a man.
Yeah, and this will plant the seeds of some future victory, right?
Or future rebellion.
Yes. Who's the loser of the episode?
Irv B.
Irv B, also the loser of the episode, with an honorary mention to Dylan, who does not get any marshmallows.
Yes.
Because marshmallows are for team players.
Oh, yeah, I think we might get like snippets of like flashbacks or dream sequences with Irv, kind of like we got with Bert this episode.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to get Irv as a real character anymore.
Yeah, it seems like he's maybe done in the any world. We're done with Irv.
He better not be done in the Audi world.
All right. How many marshmallows out of 10 are you giving this episode?
9.25.
Yeah, that's weird and very accurate, very specific.
Yes.
I was thinking 9. Definitely great episode. This is in every show like this, where there's mystery and you wonder what's going on, there's the episodes you point back to that are key episodes. This is a key episode. You got some big reveals, and now there are characters who are moving forward who are different at the end of the episode than they were at the beginning.
Indeed.
It's good stuff. Hey, what did you think of Severance Season 2, Episode 4, Woe's Hollow? Let us know in the post for this on social media. And as always, keep sharing this with your Severance friends. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Share us on social media. Give us a review, too, on whatever medium you're listening in on, because that helps with more people to discover the fun we are having.
Indeed.
Until next time. That was my noise for the Severance.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. Make here whatever. See you next time.